Alrighty, hello. Thank you for joining me, everybody, for Illustration Masterclass here on this fine Friday. I hope you are all doing well out there. If you're watching over on YouTube or Twitter, I'm following the chat on Behance. That's be.net/Adobe Live. So if you want to follow along and watch with the gang who's going to be asking questions and making comments, go ahead and head over there so we can chat and hang out, okay? Today, we're going to be talking about this idea that you've probably heard a lot in various art tutorials or in drawing classes and whatnot, this idea of working big to small. And you hear it said over and over again, work big to small, big to small. What does that mean? Well, we'll cover that today, and we'll show some examples of how that thinking is applied to some illustrations that I've selected. And then I'll also do a demo where we'll run through that exercise right here on the show. Hi to Bruce. What's up? Nice to see you, and thank you, Bruce, for your message. Yes, I was sick. I'm sorry on Wednesday that we did not get to have Brush Hour, but we'll be back with that show. Abdullah is here. Hello, Abdullah, and Jack and Cody and Munir. Hello. Leah is here. Hi, Cryo, all the way from Ireland, I believe. And Rike from Denmark. Rika, hope I'm saying your name correctly. Not totally sure. Katarina, nice to see you. Tula, nice to see you as well. And Linda. And Sydney and Uriel, all these fine folks are joining us. Great. Well, let's get right to it, okay? So we are going to hop over to Photoshop where I'm working today. And we're going to talk about this big to small concept. And I thought we'd just start with something you may have seen before, this painting here by Botticelli, Venus. And here's what I want to just point out. This painting is full of lovely details. Let's just zoom in here for a minute and look at the folds in the fabric here, both the dress and the sort of very large shawl, if you'll call it that, or rather blanket that she is holding. And in addition to that, you'll notice that there is actually a pattern that's been painted onto the dress itself and also onto that larger blanket, okay? And if we look over here in the hair, you see all these beautiful details as well, and the details of this botanical sort of necklace, if you will, right? In addition to the what's here over around the waist. Look at all these details here in the sleeves, okay? Details everywhere you look. Every individual leaf painted beautifully with highlights and shadows to boot. Let's look over at Venus's hair because it's absolutely amazing. Now look, all of these patterns here. Let me just do this so you can see this. See all these nice S curves and C curves and all this business, right? Large right on down to small, every tiny little curl, right? Every little strand as we get down here into these tiny little fine hairs, etc. All right, now, here's my question to you. Of course, there's more everywhere you look. Everywhere you look, details galore. Here is my question. If you were going to attack something like this and say, I'm going to try this, I'm going to paint something like Botticelli's Venus, okay? I'm going to just do it. Would you start your illustration like this? Why don't I just reduce the opacity here for a moment? And let's take a look at a little something here, okay? All right, ready? Is this how you would start this illustration? All right, starting from scratch, and I think I'll start on this little strand of hair. Okay, and I'll start drawing the hair. That's how I'm going to start. Don't worry about the face. The hair is really interesting to me, so I'm going to start drawing the hair. All right, now who in the chat can tell me why this would be a problem? Why would it be a problem to start this enormous painting with all these details and this complexity of this composition and the different subject matter and all the elements? What would be the problem with doing that? Why would you not start with the finer strands of hair? Let's see if we have any takers here on this question. Curious to know if anybody has any comments about that. Hey, Jason, you made it to a live class. Yes, glad you're here. Thank you for joining us. Bonjour, Pierre. Thank you for being here as well. Franck as well. Annika, hello. Salut. Well, I'm not seeing any answers to my question here. I wonder if everybody's stumped or if nobody wants to chime in. Linda says you lose the relationships between all the elements. Sure, yes. Proportions, says Rika, of course. If you go too detailed right away, says Sydney, your proportions are likely to get messed up. Indeed. Alexa says you might run out of time. Time is not the issue here. Don't worry. You could spend 6 months on it. No worries about that. Proportions, yes, we keep hearing proportions. That's correct. Let's think about all the way back, if we go back about 1.5 years to the illustration masterclass series I did on composition. And taking a look at this painting. If I were to tell you, okay, hey, so-and-so, I would like for you to please paint a picture of the Venus, okay? I want a couple of angels somewhere in there, and I want this other character about to drape a cloth over her as she emerges from the water. I'd like to have a little bit of a landscape in there, and maybe some flowers and some little details and whatnot. Can you paint that for me? Well, what you do is you say to yourself, all right, what are the main ingredients of this illustration? And then you think about them in terms of large to small. So first of all, why don't we start with this? Right here. This is our picture plane. These are the dimensions we're working with. This is the bounding box, so to speak, of the artwork that we have chosen, okay? And this choice may have been made because of where the painting would have been displayed. I don't know. This choice may have been made because of it suiting the elements of the composition and Botticelli liking the arrangement of those. This set of proportions may have been selected because of the golden ratio. I'm sure that if I were to place it over this rectangle, we'd find that it actually probably fits quite nicely. You know, if I were to estimate that this is about a square right here, okay? Trying to get that about right. Something tells me we'd probably be pretty close, wouldn't we? Okay? To this being a golden ratio kind of a situation. Okay? But let's start with this. We have to start big to small. And the first thing we think about is, what is the space within which I am working? What are those constraints? Good. Got that. Next, what do we do? Let's talk about the size of the characters. Now forget proportion of arms to legs and to torso and to head and things like that. Let's just start with something like this and say, all right, one figure is going to be pretty much centered, okay, in my picture plane. And that is our main focus. That's our main character there, all right? And this is roughly the size that I want that person to be. Then I'd like to have a little grouping over here of two other figures, okay? These will be the angels, and I think I'll have that fourth character off here, okay, reaching over this way. And we'll put some trees back here, okay, behind that figure. I think the shell should be about this big, and I want my horizon line to be top of center up here, okay, so we're pushing off from the center there a little ways, right? So it isn't boring. We don't want to split it down the middle. All right. Yeah, that's feeling pretty good. Okay, now this would be a place to start right here. Let's turn off now the painting for a moment and just think. And I say, all right, so, you know, figure 1, figure 2, and maybe some wings off that way. Now what I just did was suggest 2 figures, a little oval for a head and sort of a size of a torso, and maybe the rest of the legs down there. Okay, same over here. I say, all right, figure over here, and torso, and there we go. Okay, figure over here, reaching up that away, torso, and there we go. This is what I mean about big to small. I'm not dealing with eyes, right? I'm not starting with eyes and eyebrows and little details like nose and mouth, right? And the cheekbones. And this is certainly not what I'm gonna do with this drawing, okay? Because to focus on something that small forgets and leaves out every other major element in the piece, right? And you don't want to get bogged down in tiny little details that early on in the painting. No, no, no. Bad, bad, bad. Do not trap yourself that way. The beauty of working in a way where you have these larger shapes is you can move them around. You can say, I'd like to take this person and shift them over that way. Shift them back a little bit. And I'd like to take her and I'd like to move her over this way a little bit. Now to do all of that, right, I don't want to have to redraw all these things and make a bunch of complicated selections and so on. I want to just have big fat shapes that I can move around and place and arrange. And then we start to talk about, yes, proportion, okay? So once you get past this phase where you sort of have an idea of where things sit and roughly how big those larger elements are, okay, you start to think about relationships. One element to another first. This is where we start. One element to another element. Then, internally, when speaking about one element or another, right, within the boundaries of that single element, what are the proportions we want to talk about? And then we go from big to small within the confines of that set of shapes or that larger shape, okay? And so on and so on. And we keep drilling down until we get to finally, at the very end, what do we get to? That's when we arrive at a point where we are painting little tiny flowers and branches of a pattern on a dress. Okay, that is going to be the last thing. Little tiny lines for highlights on these golden trees here, right? Details on the leaves. All these fine little marks in the water, etc., etc. Okay? Now, this applies to everything, even if you're not doing a painting of the Venus like Botticelli here and spending months and months trying to get something like this right. Even if you were just doing, let's say, character design, you wanted to do a single character. You've heard this many times, the idea that the silhouette is important, right? What are the larger shapes that identify that character from a distance, easy to spot, right? How does that silhouette stand out? What is the construction of that character when thinking about things in terms of primitives, spheres and cubes and pyramids and things like that, and assembling that character, or more two-dimensional language, of course, circles and rectangles and squares and triangles and things like that. How do we assemble a character, and what are the proportions of those shapes relative to one another? We're still always working big to small. Okay, let's see what the questions are here if we have any. Scale when pinning this big, says Bruce. Yes, that's important. Oh, you're talking about that up front. Drawing the details without focusing on the big picture. Bingo, bingo. There is a triangle in the composition. You are correct. You are correct, Pierre. It would take me 6 months to get the hair right, says Stephen. Right. All right, now, let's take a look at a different one. Dang, whoa, yikes, dang. Lots going on here. Quite a bit of detail in this beautiful illustration by David Finch. If you're not familiar with David Finch, fantastic illustrator, comics artist, as you can see. Really a master of everything you can do with pen and ink, and he just goes to town with the cross-hatching and all the detail and the darks and the lights, and just over the top in every way and in the best possible ways. So do you think that Monsieur David, when he starts a drawing like this, Do you think that the first thing he does is say, I think I'm going to work on these teeth. I think I'll get the mouth right, and then I'll move on to the nose. And yeah, and then I'll deal with this pipe right over here. That is not how things go. It's not how you're thinking things through in your mind, unless you're Kim Jong-gi. How do you say his name? I think that's right. No, this is not how we do it. So what do you think Monsieur Finch did first? Well, let's take a look. And let us knock this back. And let's take a look. Let's take a look. So here we have this illustration that's full of complexity. But my guess is, and if I just zoom out a bit, because remember, we talked about this many times on the show, but thumbnails are your friend. Work really small when you're trying to figure out the big picture. Sounds like the opposite of what you should be doing, but no. When you simplify it down to where you can't make a lot of detailed marks, right? When you're not able to draw details, that's a good thing. You're focusing on the big picture. I think Mr. Finch was thinking, hey, Batman's going to be kind of hanging out. Let me get that a little darker. Batman's going to be hanging out down here, okay? And I'm going to have him sort of like hunched over, one arm this way, head right here, right? Other arm back. You can do that for a hand, right? Oof, that's a good looking hand. All right, so he's down there. And in the foreground, I'm going to have this big baddie right here. Right? And there's his head, and he's kind of like leaning over, looking at Batman. And the perspective, we're going to have a low camera angle. Okay, so I'm going to see like some stuff in the ceiling and a wall that he's leaning against here. And the other hand, it's going to come out down there behind the leg. Okay, and that is our picture. Okay, so let's just take a look at that. Huh. Doesn't look like much, but it is what it is, right? This is how we figure it out. Now, just as an experiment, just as an exercise, let's try something here. This is where we wound up. Batman and whoever this person is. I can't tell if that's the Hulk or, I don't know. That would make sense, Marvel and DC. So we just call this, you know, guy. Okay? So this is the composition that wound up making it to the final cut there, going to art, do the big stuff, right? But let's try something here. Let's do this. All right, we get ourselves the same dimensions. And let's take a look at an alternative. Okay? Before David wound up with that composition, he might have tried some other things, right? Maybe he had this situation. Maybe the guy is leaning over like this. Rawr. One hand, another hand. Okay? We have him this way. And then we have Batman. Like, yikes. There's Batman, okay? And then maybe we have like some debris and some other garbage here. Some of those pipes and whatnot. Okay? That could have been the composition. We don't know. But look how quickly we're able to work that out and try something different. Right? So this is what I'm talking about. You're working big to small. You're just trying stuff out and you're trying to arrange things and figure out the shapes and the sizes and whatnot. Right? Now you could have decided too, well maybe, you know, I don't want things quite so centered. So maybe I'll kind of move it like this. Have a bit of the guy's head there. And we'll just angle it a little bit differently. And then we'll do something like this. Here, I'll just make my eraser bigger. Don't forget to use your bracket keys. Using the bracket keys, making things bigger here. Maybe I kind of do this. I just shift things a bit. I've got one arm back like that. Okay. The other one's still like this. Yeah. Then we have Batman down here, like on the ground, like, ugh. And he's hurt. Got one leg there, the other leg, there's some stuff here, whatever. And then we put that door there for some detail. And we kind of like throw things out this way, right? So he's here, looking up towards there, right? That could be another tiny shift. So we made a little shift there. Now to make a shift like that with a bunch of detail, can you imagine how painful that would have been? That would have been a disaster, okay? Yeah, that's what you're talking about. What about this? Batman's up against the thing. Don't hurt me. He's got one leg back here, one leg underneath. Okay. Maybe the cape is like this. Whatever. And then we have the guy, rawr, leaning over like this, taking a step forward towards Batman, like that. Right? He probably tried something like this and said, that's not very, that's not very intimidating or scary. Another thing you can always do is like tilt the camera, right? That makes that guy look even more scary because now you're on in a situation where the floor is tilted, right? Everything's tilted. The guy looks more menacing as he's bearing down on Batman, okay? But here is where things wound up, right? Pretty fantastic, really, really, really strong, great piece of work. But we all know that he did not start the whole drawing by going, think I'm gonna mess around with that finger. No. That wouldn't make any sense at all, okay? All right, yeah, Ink Master indeed, says Frank. He is indeed. Yeah, it looks kind of hulky, like those jeans. It's not some other guy, I guess. Great perspective. I agree. Hey, Jacqueline. Thanks for joining us. Hello. Could be Solomon Grundy, says Jason. Yeah, maybe so. All right, so 2 good examples there of drawings or paintings with a lot of complexity. But then when you step back and look big to small, you figure out, okay, now, let's figure out how things actually started. So, just to take it to another place here, let's say, you're halfway through the drawing and this is where things start to get to where, for example, here, right, I've got this shape for my hands, feels good, right, and for my arm. Once the proportions are all good here, right, deltoid, etc., bicep, yada yada, once this stuff all works, okay, then you start going in and being like, cool, all right, I'm gonna work out now all these muscles in the forearm, okay, get that elbow protruding towards me, and then bust across here with some vascular coolness right there, okay. These kinds of things come later, right? That muscle right there is a great idea. Feel the strength of that hand because of the way it's drawn and rendered, right? So all that stuff comes later. It's like working on the big shapes, then working on the medium shapes, and then getting into the finer points. Something like this pipe in the ceiling. It's not like you start with a crack, right? Or a little bump, or some like stains and things, right? No. You start with this. Okay, then you make decisions about, okay, this section here is going to be a little wider than this section here, right? The diameter is going to be bigger, right? Etc., etc. So everything works from the simplest shape, the simplest statement about that thing, down to more and more detail. Okay, gang? So here is my assignment. Assignment. 2 figures seated on a bench. Setting, park with trees. 1 person is walking a dog, so that's a 3rd person in the picture. There's a pond with ducks. There's a city in the background. Where should I start? Should I just start drawing the dog? What do you think? I don't think so. Thanks, Sean. I do feel a little better, thank you. What's truly better for illustrations, Illustrator or Photoshop, says Anirudh. That is not a question that can be answered in the way that it was phrased. Let me help you. Neither of them are better for illustrations. What matters is the kind of illustration you want to do. So if you want to do a piece of vector art, that's art that is infinitely scalable. It could be scaled up to the size of a building or down to the size of a postage stamp. It's resolution independent. Then you would use Illustrator, but you'd have to know that when you use Illustrator and do use a vector art application like Illustrator, you're very limited when it comes to the kinds of marks you can actually make. They are going to have a clean line to them, a clean edge. The shapes will be clean and sharp, or they'll be soft in a way that is a very smooth transition from dark to light or from one color to another, etc. The gradients will be smooth, the lines will be sharp and clean, because vector art does not support the kind of variety that you would get with pixel art, which you would create in Photoshop or Fresco. Fresco, by the way, also supports vector brushes, though, which is great. So with a Photoshop or a Fresco, if you are using pixel brushes or raster brushes, what you're going to be doing is you're going to be working with pixels, which means you have to, at the start of the illustration, know what the ultimate destination will be for that art and the final size for print or for screen or whatever it happens to be, so that you don't wind up with a situation where you need to, in the end, enlarge it and then wind up with pixelation in the image. Pixel brushes will give you a lot of different ranges of textures and different kinds of marks, and they can also do things like work with what are called color dynamics, where you're basically stamping the brush, and with each successive stamp of the brush or across the length of a stroke, you can have the color vary or jitter. You can do things with the opacity of the mark that you're drawing based on the pressure you're using with a pressure-sensitive stylus and tablet. So really the question is, what is the look of the art you want? Is it really clean? Is it really crisp? Is it really sort of, I don't want to say, I'm trying to find the right vocabulary here so that I don't make it sound like stuff that you create in Illustrator isn't dynamic or isn't quote-unquote painterly. It actually could be, depending on how you actually use the app. But if you're more into drawing with your hand and making expressive marks and painting and things like that, you probably want to go with more of a raster situation, or pixels, Photoshop, Fresco, that's what you want to do. Okay. For example, if I were to try and do something like this with vector brushes, I'd have a really hard time, because this has a canvas texture, okay, and the brush responds to things like the direction and the tilt and the pressure of the stylus, and can also do things like this. I can mix paint like that. To try and do things like that in a vector environment would not be simple, okay? This is more of a raster thing. I hope that helps. I hope that's information that you find useful. Something like oil painting or watercolor is Photoshop or Fresco, correct. And something like anime, comic stuff is Illustrator. No, that's close, but you could do anything like anime and comic stuff in Photoshop too. It just depends on the brush you use. Look at this. If I use this brush, okay, and I want to draw some anime, or whatever, I'm not going to have any problems with that because this brush just has a really clean kind of a look to it, right? But it is pixels. So if you wanted this to be infinitely scalable for some reason, like you're going to size it up to, I don't know, like some enormous poster or something, I don't know, whatever. When what you could do is you could draw it in a pixel environment if you drew it a decent size, and you could use an app like maybe Adobe Capture to turn it into vector line art, or in Illustrator there's a feature where you can do what's called an image trace. Okay, but you know, that looks pretty clean, right? So that it just depends on the brush that you're using. There are features with vectors that are just really awesome that you don't get with pixel brushes. Certain actions you can use in Illustrator that are real time savers. I like to think of Illustrator more as like a shape building exercise in illustration, and Photoshop and Fresco more like you're drawing with your hand to create the work. Okay, maybe that's a better way to sort of distinguish the two. I really don't know, but I hope that's helpful. Okay, so let's move on with our assignment. So 2 figures seated on a bench. Setting: park with trees, 1 person walking a dog, pond with ducks sitting in the background. This is a lot to think about. So here we go. Now I could go lots of ways. I could go with a vertical solution, right? I could go with a horizontal solution. Then we could look at both and we can see how to do it. And because I'm going to work big to small, right? I'm really not going to have to sweat it. So we'll start with the vertical, all right? 2 figures seated on a bench. All right, now if they're sort of the focal point, if they're the thing that I want people to be paying attention to, maybe they are here in the foreground, okay, and the bench is like this. And here are the figures, figure 1, figure 2, talking to each other on this bench. Okay, maybe that's sort of where we are. And we're gonna have a nice low sort of horizon here. And then here can be the person walking the dog, and they can be sort of facing away from us, so they're not as important because we can't see their faces. Okay, so person 1, person 2, and then this person walking away from us walking the dog. All right, what else do we have? It says park with trees. All right, so we could have like a tree branch coming in this way with some leaves or whatnot, right? That could be coming in that way. Or you could do something like have a branch coming in this way, right? And some more like this. We have some more trees then maybe back here. As this person gets walking up that way, we have these trees kind of like helping to sell the perspective as they get a little smaller in the distance. Okay, it's like a line of trees there. Let's see, pond with ducks sitting in the background. Okay, so here, they could be right in front of that pond. Okay, that's where this bench is. It's right in front of the pond here. Okay, so we put the pond here, and maybe we got a little ducky, I don't know, like here, duck. Okay, maybe some ducklings. That'd be nice, right? And this could kind of like curve around that way. City in the background. Okay, so we have another, let's do another little shape there. Actually, you know what, let's do this. Let's frame the figures behind a clump of foliage here, okay? We can finish out some of these other shapes and just put all the trees and stuff back there and all that. And then here we see peeking out off in the distance, okay? We got these trees here. Here we can have our little skyscrapers and whatnot back there. Okay? And now we just have some like clouds and whatever. So there, let's take a closer look at that, okay? So, person 1, hello, sitting here. Maybe their leg is crossed. And here's our bench. Person 2. Talking. Legs behind, maybe down under the bench there like that. So there they are, sitting together. Okay. Let's bring the duck over here, actually. Duck. Pond here. Duckling, duckling, duckling. Alrighty. Here's a dog. There's a person walking the dog. And here we're gonna have like a branch, some foliage, okay? And we'll just let all that nice stuff happen up there, etc., etc. Gonna have more of those back here along the path. And as we get closer, they get bigger, of course. These treetops here, treetops, 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 treetops. Back, 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 back. Okay. And we got some nice shape here behind them. In fact, maybe we could even have some foliage up here, kind of popping over that way, and then we have our little city. Back there. See, I'm just sort of making a bit more shape detail now, right? But not much. Thinking a little bit about darks and lights and stuff like that. Some more people maybe way back there. Kind of sell that. And then we'll go ahead and draw our bounding box. Okay, there you go. Turn off the sketch for a moment. And that could be how we handle the vertical solution there. Okay, so next, I might think about, okay, darks and lights and stuff like that. So I start to think about there being all these darks here where the shadows, that are being cast underneath all the foliage, right? So those areas wind up getting dark. Okay, and that'll help to sort of frame these figures in the foreground. Okay. Same here. Darks, 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 a few lights peeking through. But mostly we have dark shapes there, except for the tops of the canopies of the trees and everything else. Okay. Dark, 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 dark. Dark, dark, dark. Okay. And here we have our little duckies. Okay. Ta-da. All right, see how quickly we do that? There we go. Do you always think of every artwork in landscape and portrait? No, I do squares too sometimes, especially because it's popular, you know, with Instagram posts and things. The editor tells you what size to make things. It depends. If it's editorial, you usually get a very specific size. That sound you're hearing, Anirudh, is me drawing on the surface of the tablet here. That's what you hear. I'm using my pen, and you're hearing it hit the surface. This microphone is picking it up. Let's see what else. Thanks. Oh, you're welcome, Anirudh. Thank you for watching. All right. Cool, 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 cool. All right, let's keep going. Let's keep going. So here, we have one solution there. Alrighty, we have one solution there. I'll go ahead and move my microphone up a hair. I don't know if that'll make a difference. You'll probably still hear the tapping though. That's just how it's gonna be. Sorry about that. Let's go ahead and look at our sketch again. And we're gonna now move to the horizontal idea. So let's change it up. What do you want to do? How do you want to do this? Yeah, let's move these people over here now. I'll put them about there. Okay, so here are going to be my people on the bench. Person 1, person 2, person 2, person 1, whatever. Bench. Alright, that's them. Person walking a dog could just be sort of walking off this way, dog. Okay. I still like the idea of having the pond in the foreground. Maybe in this illustration, the duckies are sort of like right in front of us, or we could have something else. We could have a little land right there. Have the little pond running across this way. This will be our focal point right here. And you notice I'm kind of throwing it on one of the thirds right there. Okay. So it's on that third right about there. Lazy composition, but it works. Okay. Let's see. We have pond with ducks, city in the background, park with trees. Could put a nice big tree right here. That'd be kind of nice. Just have that kind of do its thing right there. Maybe the duck is bigger now. In the extreme foreground, we see the duck here. Maybe that like pushes things closer to us. We have an idea of how far away these people are, you know? And then this person's a little smaller back here, walking the dog or something. All right, put a big branch there. Have some foliage coming down that away. And here we have the people who are going to be under the trees, so they're going to be a little darker there. Okay. duck. And maybe it'd be nice to sort of design a path. So from here, there's like a sort of a thing that goes that way. And that'll make these people a little smaller as they're walking away on the path there. Okay. And then another, oh, this is something I like to do sometimes. I'm going to actually do this. I'm going to take these people and slide them over just a hair. And then right here, just have a tree just kind of cut us off like there. I know people advise against doing that sometimes, but I'm going to do it in this case because I want this to be like extreme foreground kind of thing where it gives us a nice organic shape to sort of complement this organic shape here. Okay. And then what we can do in this case is just have like a nice sort of line of foliage here behind everybody, behind everything that's happening here. Okay, person 1, person 2, bench, path, and then back here, you know, some flowers and whatnot, some smaller little bushes and things back there. Okay. And then we can easily stick a few little trees up behind all that, vary those shapes and whatnot. Okay, maybe a couple little cypress trees or something back here. That's kind of fun. And then off in the distance, there is our little city right back there. Okay. So both of these could work. Okay, both of these could work. Let's go ahead and let's just knock that opacity back a hair, and we'll come over the top of it with our pen, and we'll have two little ideas there. Big to small, big to small. Okay. Little duck in the water there. Okay. And behind that duck we have this sort of shape of the pond there. Okay. We have person 1 here. And person 2. Here's our tree. Okay, we got all our foliage and stuff. Right there, we got more little shapes back here of other trees and things. Plants, pretty stuff back behind everybody there. And our little dog walker here, little dog. And there's that path. And here another tree just kind of doing its thing. Okay, some more of that foliage. And back here we've got our city. Some trees that are a little taller as well, just to kind of make it more interesting, etc. Okay. And there you go. Two nice options. Okay. So earlier I talked about this. We'll just do this for a couple minutes because I want to mention it as an important little thing to consider here. We're talking about character design, right? So if I were going to design a character, right, would I start with the eyes? You know, I wouldn't recommend it, but do what you want. But if I'm thinking, you know, okay, it's going to be a witch, you know, I don't want to think things like, okay, the body is going to be kind of this sort of triangular, rounded kind of a shape. Maybe the head's going to be like super tiny, long nose, right? And then the brim of the hat's going to be like huge. And they'll go back that way, right? And then like funny little stick legs like this, skinny little arms. I'll get you, my pretty, okay? And there's the broom, you know? And the feet are kind of like long like that. That might be sort of more how I would approach that exercise, thinking big to small, okay? And then get in there and be like, you know, okay, there's that nose. Big brim for the hat there. Her weird spindly arms. Long fingers. And then this big funny coat. Right? And then there's my funny like little witch character. She's got little pants on down here. Something like that. Okay, maybe some big pockets here or something. But I didn't start with like the eyes, you know? I'm thinking more about from a distance, like can I recognize that character? What does that look like? Right? I'll get you. Okay, there you go. So Yeah, it applies to everything, big to small, big to small, big to small. Go ahead and watch the masterclass I did on proportion and on improving the accuracy of your drawing. And we'll talk, there's more about this in that class, and I think that's helpful and relevant for everybody, so check it out. Thanks everybody for joining me for another episode of Illustration Masterclass. Hope you enjoyed it. Remember to have a great weekend. Remember to do some drawing whenever you find the time. And I appreciate you all being here with me. And remember, until next time, take care of yourselves. Take care of each other, please. Remember to be kind. And I'll say, ciao for now.